I'm Katie Wells, host of the Maximized Minimalist podcast. I escaped the hamster wheel of modern-day motherhood, overwhelmed by clutter and buried under the mental load. Now I live in a home that feels calm, manageable, and made for real life. I have margin in my days, energy for who matters most, and time for slow mornings and silly dance parties in the kitchen with my family. With over 5 million listens, the show has helped women around the world turn their homes into their happy place. Around here, we simplify for more peace, more presence, and more joy. We choose grace over guilt and progress over perfection. And we believe your home should give back more than it takes. I'm here to help you do the same. Come along with me and my guests as we share the real stories, habits, and strategies that help you lighten the load from the inside out. Pull up a seat, friend, and let's do this together. Ready, set, simplify. What is up, Simplifiers? Back with another incredible episode for you. So I don't have teenagers yet, but I'll be honest, I feel like there's the same type of fear creeping in that I remember when my boys were really little, when they were babies, because back then everyone warned me about the terrible 2s and terrible 3s. And I think just that label alone created so much stress and expectation before I even got to that point. And I really feel the same, if I'm being honest, about heading into teenage years. And again, I was a teenager. We were all teenagers. We remember how that's a tough time, like the eye rolls, the slam doors, the ups and downs and moods, like everything. Plus, like culture has already told me this is going to be really, really hard. And I know I'm not the only parent that feels this way, which is why I'm really excited for today's conversation, because I know Dr. Ann, got to know her over the last year or so, and she takes such a refreshing approach to this particular season of parenting and really a whole lot of other things. And I know myself and my listeners are just going to walk away feeling encouraged instead of afraid. So Ann, welcome back. I'm so excited to chat with you again.
Thank you, Katie. Oh, reminder, it's Ann-Louise.
Ann-Louise, sorry. I'm the opposite. So people call me Katie Joy on accident. Not on accident. It's like my full name. And I'm like, only say that if like I'm in trouble.
You're in trouble.
Like, Katie Joy, yeah. Right? So you're the opposite. You get both names.
Opposite, right.
Yeah. Okay. Ann-Louise, my bad. And I also want to tell any new listeners too, we did an episode, it's episode 291 on ADHD and strategies on better decision-making and focus. I still get messages about this, almost a year later, from adults, from teenagers that listen to this episode. So I just appreciate your words of wisdom. And I want to let you know the impact you had on just that one episode has been wildly amazing for this community. So thank you. So go listen to that one, all the listeners. And diving into the topic at hand, right? Teenagers, I want to ask you and kick us off with what do you wish more parents understood about the teenage years?
I wish they understood that the behavior they're seeing in front of them is not the behavior that they should pay attention to. That they need to understand that to get curious about those behaviors. For example, you see a teenager whose room is really messy, cluttered, crap everywhere, food, dishes, laundry, whatever it is. And what's so easy to do is for the parent to take away their phone, take away their privileges, take away their life, yell at them, nag at them, whatever it is. Tell them to look at Katie's episode about cluttering, like all these things. But we have to get curious about why the room is messy, or why they come in with a bad attitude after school, or why they're rolling their eyes and calling you bruh. And why they're not eating their food, why they're sneaking the phone. All these things look like bad behaviors. And what is frequently misunderstood is that it's not about the behavior. It's about the intention or the need driving the behavior. It always goes back to that. So whenever parents are like, well, I don't know what to do if, or, I wish I could talk to you when my kid is doing this. I'm like, well, it always goes back to the same thing. Get curious about what's driving the behavior. And I think that's the most misunderstood piece about parenting teens is people look at the behavior and they don't look at the intention driving it.
So, I'm going back to my teenage years. I don't know that I could have verbalized or even understood, there's a lack of self-awareness there.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to, is that where we just try to figure it out without communicating? With communicating is always nice because sometimes they can name it and be like, hey, sorry, I snapped, I was hangry or whatever. I'm like, okay, relatable. Thank you for the apology. What does that look like? I understand it's partly giving grace, like, hey, maybe he had a tough day at school. But how do you open up that curiosity? Is it with conversation or just taking space? Or I'm sure it can look a lot of different ways.
Yeah, that's excellent question because teenagers lack a lot of self-awareness. They don't have that sense of introspection to be able to know, like, oh, mother, I snapped at you because I was going through some teenage angst.
That's right.
They're not going to be able to communicate that. And that's where we as the parent have to be a detective and get curious. We have to lean in and know our teenager enough or attempt to know them enough to understand what is happening. So I noticed that I've been seeing a lot of failed grades in the daily grading communication for school. What's happening that is preventing you from getting better grades? What's going on? Well, I don't know. Yeah, I wonder. I figured that you would know because I'm not sure either. Is it feeling like sometimes it's overwhelming or you can't keep up with the schoolwork? Or is it that you understand it, but you don't know how to communicate it? So you start to give options about what could be going on and tying in some of those emotions. Yeah, I know that it can be frustrating or it can be overwhelming or it can feel embarrassing. What's going on that's preventing you? Like, what's the roadblock that's getting them to be their best self, basically? And you're asking very strategic questions. And it would be like, if you're going to see a coach to help you with organizing, like, well, what's preventing you from keeping your garage maintained? What's keeping you from having a pantry that's organized? Like, we want to get curious about it because if we just fix it, because, parents might just do the work for the kid or they AI it, but you're not getting to the root cause of it. And I know that you're a big proponent of getting to the root cause of an issue. So it's not just about decluttering. It's about what meaning does this thing have that you're holding on to? And it's the same thing with looking at these challenges is they're not going to know. But you have to be able to be curious and patient enough to walk them through the process so they can have that aha moment. Oh, that's why I feel like I have too much stuff in my room, or I don't know where things go, or,
Yes.
the teacher talks in a way that I don't understand. I don't get it. And I feel so stupid that I don't want to ask a question. Oh, that makes total sense. And then you can get into problem solving with them, along with them, once you can start to tease it out. And you may be wrong with what is driving it. But that's where you're like, okay, let's try this out. Okay, well, that crashed and burned. Okay, let's try this other thing then. Let's see if this is the reason why this is going on. And then you experiment on that. Okay, well, that didn't work. Okay, well, let's look at this as well. So you're doing this problem solving along with your teenager to really determine what is driving this behavior so that you can help them gain that insight. So it can be a long, grueling, painful process. But what they're learning in it is it's not just because I'm lazy. It's not just because I'm stupid. It's not just because I'm unmotivated. There's other things going on that's driving this behavior. And it's not a character flaw. There's maybe a skill deficit or there's an emotional overwhelm.
What about for the parent out there who's tried asking those strategic questions, but it's like talking to a wall?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then you lean into that. Yeah, I get that you don't know. Sometimes I don't know why I do the things that I do either. So I'm here for you and we'll figure it out together. Like, you don't have to jump in, fix and rescue and figure it all out. Like
Yes.
that's not always realistic. But what you're trying to communicate to your teenager is that you are there with them. You're walking alongside them. You're not just going to throw your hands up and say, well, screw you. Let's just give up. Like, you're saying, I am here for you too. And we will figure it out together. We will ask the strategic questions. We'll figure it out and see what we can do. But I'm here for you whenever you're ready to talk, or I'm here for you whenever we can figure out what's going on next. So yeah, they may shut you down or they may not know it all and not even willing to have the conversation, but you still need to communicate that you are there and you're accepting them where they're at, but you're also there to help them move through it too.
Yeah. It's interesting. Again, my kids are 9 and 10, but I can see it's becoming more clear to me that I have to communicate things differently to each of them, specifically when I'm trying to help them navigate their emotions, right? Anger, frustration, jealousy, whatever that is. And for my younger son, he gets triggered when I try to label how he's feeling. Like, oh, I think maybe you're feeling jealous. No, I'm not. No, because he doesn't want to be told. He needs to come to that on his own. And if I just give him a little space, I'm thinking it'll still be like this in teen years, but hard to say. He gets there. right? He doesn't really want to just be told. And I get that. I'm like that because I was the baby and I'm like, don't tell me what to do. I got told what to do my whole life. You don't tell me how I feel. And then my other son, he really loves to verbally process stuff like that with me. Not all the time, but he's just, I guess, more skilled at that. So what are some common ways that we can continue to support our kids through these tough years? Because our bodies are changing, hormones, I'm sure, play a big role. And I'm going back to my teenage years in my head. I know I was not the most pleasant to be around. It's just like, I think for me, as I'm saying this out loud too, we have to remember as parents, like, what was the saying? As I remember when they were little, like, they're not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. Like, I was so uncomfortable in my body and with in my environment and in my school and navigating friend groups. And there's so many challenges, and more so for our kids with technology use. So how do we come alongside them and, better support them and our relationship with them?
We start by asking them what they need. If finding out, like the one who is more verbal, more intellectual, more conversational, asking them, is there something that you feel you need that you're not getting? Is there something that's missing from your life that you wish you had more of? If money, time, resources were no object, what would you love to be doing with your free time? Like just asking very strategic, creative questions to get to the root of it. One of the things in solution focused therapy that I ask my therapy clients when they feel stuck is often, it's called the miracle question. If you were to go to bed tonight and a miraculous event occurred and all the things that are keeping you stuck and keeping you feeling miserable were to instantly just go away and you woke up the next morning, how would you know things were better? How would you know that miraculous event occurred? And almost 99.9% of the time, there's one person that I asked that question to and they just said all the miserable things. I'm like, that is not the question. But it's so fascinating what people will start to say. Like, what will you see? You get out of bed. What would be the first thing you would notice? So someone, maybe a teenager who's very depressed, might say, I would notice that I get out of bed quicker, or that I want to eat. I want to eat something nutritious, or I'll have a conversation with my friends, or I'll want to hang out with them. Whatever it is that, like, how would people know? What would you be doing differently? What would you be saying differently? What would you be wearing? What would you be eating? What would you want to be involved with? So I think it's about really getting engaged with them and getting to the heart of what's happening. Many times what's happening that parents find the teenage years miserable sometimes is because the kid that you spent the first 10, 12 years figuring out, they change it up on you.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait, I thought I knew you. And now you don't know them anymore for a variety of reasons. They're individuating, they're becoming their own person, they're separating. But it's about asking those strategic, creative questions, leaning into them, and maybe sometimes just sitting in the silence, just being in their presence. There's times when, one of my kids, they're 13 and 15, sometimes we'll hang out and binge watch a Netflix show and not even talk about anything like deep, or texting each other while sitting next to each other, or one is upstairs, I'm downstairs, and we're texting. They're like, I have to ask you something important. And then we'll just text back and forth because, she doesn't really want to talk about it verbally. So we have to get creative with how we connect. It doesn't have to be, well, we need to sit down and do a lecture. It could be through technology. It could be through a binge watching a show. It could be through a meal or going for a walk. And that connection is what's super important during the tween and teen years.
I love that. One thing we do more in the warmer months and the colder months, but we try to take a walk after dinner just on our road. And I'm telling you, it has opened up so many interesting conversations from a connection standpoint, not like a problem solving specifically, but those are just moments that I really cherish. And I notice my boys especially always want to move their bodies. They want to be physical. And actually my husband's the same. So when I have a hard conversation with Andrew, I'm like, let's take a walk. Not that that's all we do on our walk, but it really helps. I don't know if it helps like the brain processing, like nervous system regulation, open up. I'm sure there's a whole plethora of physiological things happening, right?
Yeah. And it does. That's how they discovered with EMDR, with eye movement.
Yeah.
They discovered when people were going for walks and their eyes are going back and forth.
Bilateral movement. Yes.
Exactly. Yep. So that movement, that's why it helps with depression, with anxiety, with ADHD symptoms, with feeling stressed. Walking, movement, exercise can really help with that. So yeah, you're feeling aggravated with your teen, they're aggravated with you. That's why my husband and I will often go on rage walks at the end of the day during that witching hour when I'm like, are they losing their mind? What the heck And I was like, hey, you want to go for a walk? He's like, absolutely. And then we'll go for a 30-minute rage walk. And then we're fine when we come back. So, I mean, it's for the parents too. You can do those things to regulate yourself to get away from your teenagers if you need to. And that way you have a clearer mind. So sometimes the tip isn't about leaning in more. Sometimes it's separating for a bit and then coming back when you're more regulated.
I love that. I think it's a really holistic approach. It doesn't have to look one way. And I keep reminding myself, even at my kids' ages, like this is a relationship. And before we hit record, we were talking about how, especially in our niches, it's like hack after hack and the magic pill and this, do this and it'll transform your relationship in under 1 minute. And you're like, oh, that's what I need. And then it falls flat, right? It's just like, this is a relationship. This isn't AI. This isn't like hello. So I think it's really beautiful how you share it. Like, yeah, sometimes connection can look like, hey, do you want to watch a show? Or, hey, do you want to tell me about your video game that I probably really in my heart have no interest in, but I'm trying here, to show you that I care about you and I'm semi-interested in Minecraft or Fortnite or whatever it is I'll be into at the time, Many parents, and I think this is my default because of how I was raised, but I think a lot of us default to like nagging or lecturing, especially when it's like we see a behavior like you talked about earlier, like we don't want to see that. Maybe it's a new behavior. Again, like sometimes our kids are just like, who are you? Where's this defiant kid coming from? This isn't the kid I know. So can you explain why lecturing or nagging might not be the best course of action and maybe what's a different approach could look like to foster that connection and relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we nag, because many of us were nagged at, and that is a default for many parents. We nag because we care. And
That's right.
We're also because we're anxious. We're nagging and lecturing because it gives us the illusion of control. Like if I say it enough times, maybe it'll sink in. But teens, what happens is they tune you out. And keep in mind, I have a clinic and I do parent coaching and I also do therapy with teenagers. Okay. So I hear both sides all the time. Teens tune out nagging. It sounds like the wah, 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 wah. They do not hear it. And then what happens is parents then escalate. They yell, they nag more. And then now all the communication becomes about nagging. So the way to break it is to pause and ask yourself, what is my goal here? Do I want to connect or just control? And if it's connection, then less is more. I tell parents all the time, do less. They're like, well, what do I do? No. Do less. Do less. Use fewer words, listen more, and trust that silence can sometimes speak louder than all our explaining. Because what I have found consistently with a lot of teenagers and my own is they know when they've messed up. They know when they've been rude. They know when they've been out of place. And the more you harp on it, the more defensive they become because they're trying to hold their ground. They don't want to look like a jerk. But if you can step back, take a breath, go on a rage walk, drink your coffee, snuggle up, get a tea, eat a snack, whatever it is, and take a break, many times what they'll do is they'll come back and say, hey, I know the way I rolled my eyes and called you a name was really inappropriate. I'm really sorry. And to be able to take a break from it, they often know what's going on. And if you address the thing that they're doing with nagging and more lecturing, they often will double down. And then it creates this friction. Because what often happens is when you do something that's inappropriate or rude to someone, and then they call you out on it, it feels bad to get that feedback. And I know that adults know that, but they forget that teenagers often feel bad too, but they don't always show it. So if someone says, Katie, I did not appreciate how you talked to me that way. That was really rude. Well, if you have a good enough ego, you might be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Or you might be like, well, no, I didn't mean to be rude. I was just rude because you were rude. We will often defend our right to however we showed up, because then it feels like you're attacking you're attacking who I am, my identity. And for teenagers, it's the same thing. So when we give that feedback and we nag, they will often double down because they feel like, okay, well, great. Now I messed up again. And so it's harder to reach them in those moments. So we have to say less, back up a little more. When you as a parent are more calm and regulated, then you can address it when everybody is calm. But if you are going in hot and heavy at the heat of the moment, then everything will break down. And so the nagging is a really hard default to get rid of. And I think parents need to really understand that. That's something that most parents, most of us will do. But we have to always go back to, okay, why am I nagging? And can I communicate this in a different way that doesn't feel so harsh or so annoying?
I'll say for me too, I've noticed throughout the years that if my son says something rude to me, and I immediately, like, the fire goes in my eyes, like no, you didn't. Right? There's that 1 second pause I've gotten better at where I'm like, hold on, Katie. But I think the reason that fire flashes in my eyes, and it's just certain things, we all have our triggers, right?
Uh-huh.
It's because deep down, speaking to the root of it, is because I think what he's saying about me is reflecting on how I'm doing as a parent.
Right.
So it's like, it signals to me, Katie, alarm bells going off. You stink at life. You stink at parenting. Your kid just said this to you. You better get some new books. You better do this. Do you hear that in your parenting sessions? Like, ultimately, part of our response are, of course, it doesn't feel good for anyone to be rude, but I think getting to the heart of why certain things might affect us more than others is helpful here too.
Yeah, that's where triggers come from. Something wouldn't be a trigger unless it was tapping into something, right? A memory. Otherwise, it would just be a thing. It would be neutral. So when we are triggered, we have to move away from just thinking it's about our kid, that maybe it's our issue. And yes, I absolutely agree. If you have a kid who has a mental health crisis, failing at their grades, getting bullied at school, getting kicked out of a school, or can't make friends, can't make the sports team, the team lost a game because of them. We take that very personally because, in a sense, we see our teens as an extension of us and a reflection of how good or badly we're doing as a parent. And we tend to fuse those things. And many parents feel, including myself, we feel that if our teen is doing great, then we must be rocking it out as a parent. And if they suck and they're failing and people can't stand them and they're doing terribly, then, I must be failing them as a parent.
Yes.
And I want to encourage parents that we cannot do that to ourselves, because your teenager, one of the major goals of teenage years is individuation. That means being a person separate from your parent and or caregiver. Having your own beliefs, your values, your identity, your personality, your interests, your hobbies, your goals. That is normal at that stage. So they are and they have free will. So they are going to make decisions that are sometimes completely out of alignment, with how you raise them. They're going to make decisions that came out of left field. And you're like, where is this coming from? And who is this person? And that is normal. And we cannot fuse what their decisions and their appearances are and have it as a reflection on us. That's not fair to them. And it's not fair to us. And that's why parents will say things like, a teenager tells them, I'm feeling depressed. Yeah, but look at all the sacrifices we made for you. Look at how great your life is. Well, that has nothing to do with that. Their depression is their depression, that they feel it because there is no reason. It doesn't need a reason. Depression shows up because sometimes there's other things going on. Often as parents, we take it personally because we think, you're feeling blah or bad or anxious or whatever because I failed you in some way. And we have to keep those separate.
Easier said than done, right?
It is easier said than done. But it's so important to do because that's what I hear often from teenagers is my parents, my caregivers are making my suffering about them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is.
Yeah.
Okay. We got to take the responsibility where it is. But many times it's because teenagers are going through crap. There's so many things that are going on in their lives, as is every generation that it goes through teenage years. And we have to make sure that we're not fusing our parenting identity with our teen struggles. It's not fair to them and it's not fair to us.
You sit across from teens and then their parents. And, in this day and age, technology, I'm sure, has to come up in either definitely the parenting session, I'd imagine for some, and maybe even the teen session. I don't know if you follow or know Jonathan Haidt, who wrote The Anxious Generation.
Absolutely.
One of the things he's pushing hard is rethinking how our kids, specifically teenagers, right, have access to phones, especially in school hours. And with all the research coming out, he argues that smartphones and social media are rewiring our kids' childhood in ways that could be contributing and escalating already existing anxiety, depression, and disconnection, right? So I'm curious, in your role as both a mom and a family therapist, are you seeing this play out? And what's your advice for the parents out there we're trying to walk the tightrope, right? Supporting our teens' digital lives because it's so big. I'm not there yet, but I know some teenagers, and it, for some, is huge. So how do you walk that tightrope without becoming the screen police and also understanding, reading research out there that's coming out like, oh my gosh, maybe we should change how my kid uses screen time or phones?
Yes, yes. I believe there's such a balance here because we are in a digital age and the technology is out. It is here. But we also have to be wise consumers of it so that our teenagers are doing it at the right time. And so many of my teens' friends had smartphones in like first grade, second grade, third, like very early on. And what I see in clinically with the teenagers that I see, it's not so much being on devices. It's about the excessive use of those devices. And that's what I see in the research. That's what I see clinically and in my own experiences. I see so much of a difference between teenagers who use social media and those who excessively consume social media. Because when you're excessively consuming social media, meaning you're on it 5, 6, 10, 12 hours a day, you are comparing yourself, you're getting social envy, you're feeling FOMO, you're thinking you're being left out, you're looking at other people and how your body looks, you're looking at what other people are doing that you're not doing, that they're being so successful and here I am. And so a big part of it is we have to make sure that we talk to our teenagers about how they're using social media when they get exposed to it. My kids, 13 and 15, still don't have social media accounts. And really being able to talk to them about having parent control apps on their devices. So if they have tablets, phones, and computers, you need to have devices that control when they get on, when they get off, how much access they have to things, and what apps they have access to. So on my phone, I control what my kids got smartphones in 6th grade because they were in sports and they were traveling a lot. But I block certain apps and I have times when the phone wakes up and when the phone goes to sleep and how many hours a day they can have access to it. So much of homework is on phones now.
Yes.
And that they need. So it's just so hard to limit, but really being able to watch what those things are. So I really tell parents, and a lot of parents don't have apps that control these things for their teens' devices. So if you're going to have them have these things, it shouldn't be free reign. They shouldn't just be having free access to it. My kids tell me that their friends they'll wake up in the morning and then their phone turns on at like 7:40 and their phone will be blowing up because of all the group text messages they missed between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Like, why are your friends up in the middle of the night like that? That they've missed because they weren't on it. So I think those things are super important, that we have conversations with our teens about these things and we set limits around this.
I know my knee-jerk reaction when I hear and read this research, I'm like, my kid's never going to get a phone. But that's not the reality, right?
It's
It's like, it's tempting for someone, especially with my personality, to be like, okay, well, it feels scary and I'd rather avoid the conversation or avoid them having a phone so I don't have to deal with it. But that's not the reality we're living in. Like you said, we're living in a digital age. And I think teaching our kids and having these ongoing conversations like, hey, your phone is a tool. It's not a toy. Social media is a tool, not like a toy. And speaking to the excessiveness, I wanted to share this study. I'm sure you've read it. One study found American teens ages 12 to 15 who use social media more than 3 hours per day had double the risk of negative mental health outcomes like depressive or anxiety symptoms compared to lower users. That's a Yale study. Again, there's so many more out there. I know you read the research, but I keep going back to teaching our kids how to use it. But so many of us don't know how to use it.
No.
What are our limits? What are our boundaries, right? Do we get on the phone first thing in the morning at 6 a.m. and go emails, text messages, right? It's like, it's hard.
Well, because we're doing it for work.
Yes, that's right. I tell my kids that all the time, but it's true.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, there's such a balance here because we can parent out of fear and say, no phones, no smartphones, no social media until you leave my house. And I think, and I have clients, parents who told their kids that no sleepovers, no smartphones or devices, no dating, no makeup till you leave my house. The problem with that logic, though, is now they've not had any practice under
Yes.
your supervision.
That's
And
right.
under your direct tutelage, so that if they mess up, they fall flat. Now, what do they have?
Yeah.
And I understand the whole, for example, sleepovers, right? No sleepovers. But now they're getting 16, 17. They're about to go off to college. They go to summer camp. When are they supposed to get practice with being able to advocate for themselves, to know what is appropriate, to know how to look for warning signs and danger signs? And it's same thing with our smartphones, that I believe that the age should be higher. I know that a lot of these smartphone companies and apps give kids access. I got a notification when my kids turned 13. They can now control their devices. I was like, no. And so 13, I believe, is too young. 15, 16 feels more right to me in terms of what I see clinically and what I see in the research. But also we have to give our teens practice with us so that they can be able to know, like, what is okay? What kinds of text messages are okay? What am I looking at? How do I know what apps to consume and what not to? How do I know when I should block someone or something if it's not good for my mental health or physical health? And so there's so much of a debate here because it's changing so fast. And if as parents, we don't keep up with it, we're going to get lost, and they're going to, because so many teens, they know how to do all these hacks. They know how to hide apps within other apps so that they're not found out. They know a lot of stuff, and we have to keep up to date with that.
And my guess is the more we parent out of fear and say, none of this until you're 18 and leave, the better they get at, oh, well, I can hide this or I can sneak it.
Yep.
Right. And not that they wouldn't, maybe even if you had open conversations with them and, taught them how to use it. But I'll say just from personal experience, it's like your parent says left, you go right every time.
Yeah. And
versus like, hey, let's meet in the middle and walk through this together. I don't have all the answers, but here are some things that I want to talk about.
Well, and I had an experience several months ago where my daughter was sneaking conversations with somebody at school after she found a way to be able to talk with somebody after her phone shut down, because she couldn't text because her phone was shut down, but they could call her and she could answer. She found some loophole.
Of course.
And in the middle of the night, I heard her talking and I was like, are you on your phone? And then she's like, yeah, no. So the phone, I took it. I'm not a big proponent of just taking away phones, just to take away phones. But I took it away because I knew I was going to blow up and I needed to calm down. So I took it the next day. I told her, I said, when I was a teenager, I was a very sneaky teen. I didn't have cell phones. This is in the 1900s, so I didn't have that. But I found a way on my house phone that if I dialed my number and hung up, it would ring and I'd be like, I got it. And then that way I could act as if I got a call. I found all the sneaky things. Okay. And I'm like, because I didn't feel like I could talk to my mom about certain things that were important to me. We don't have that relationship. And I don't want you to feel like you have to sneak in order to get your needs met. So tell me, why did you feel the need to speak to someone after you're supposed to be in bed? And she was like, I was feeling really sad. And this friend is so kind to me. And I needed that. Again, that's the need behind the behavior, right? On the surface, it looks like she's been being defiant. How dare she, after everything I've done, all the sacrifices I've made, am I a terrible mom? But no, she had this need. She wanted to be met. And so I'm like, that makes sense to me. I completely want you to be supported by your friends. I want you to feel like you can talk to your friends. I love that you have that. But you also need your sleep. And you don't have to sneak it to get that need met. If you need more time to talk to a friend, let me know. We can make exceptions. It's okay. And so I think that's where we have to lean in and be able to the phone isn't a bad guy. It wasn't a bad thing. Sometimes it can be. Sometimes it can be. But we also have to get curious about, why is my teen doing this thing? Is this a need that they need to get met? And why are they doing it in this way? That way we don't flip out, freak out, nag, yell, over punish. And then we totally miss the boat. And then they shut down more. And then they definitely won't talk to you about the things that matter. It's such a hard balance, though.
Well, thanks for being so honest and real. I think sometimes when we hear from experts, parenting experts, we're like, oh, their kids never have tantrums. Oh, their kids. Okay, well, she wrote a book on parenting teens, so her teens must be perfect. It's that assumption. I don't know why else so many of us kind of subconsciously make it.
We do.
And I think that's such a beautiful example of how you paused, You gave yourself space. You came around the next morning and you're like, what's the need behind the behavior? Because I think the default for so many of us, because how we were raised is, how dare you? You know better, right? To shame them into like all of a sudden behaving well because we're thinking that I'm messing up. That's, so I think that's such a beautiful example that brought tears to my eyes. And I think like, even if we could talk to each other as adults that way, like
Yeah,
it's so beautiful. And I thank you for opening up and sharing that. So in your
you're
new
welcome.
book that you have, Love the Teen You Have, I am curious if you could share the reasons why embracing the teen that's right in front of us, because I'm sure there's going to be days where we're like, I don't like the teen in front of me right now. Why embracing the one we have is so crucial for their growth and for ours too as parents.
So when I was a teenager, I had a very conflictual relationship with my mom at a certain point, and I didn't feel like she heard me or understood me. She didn't see the
Yeah.
pain that I was going through at the time that I was going through it. We didn't have that communication, and there was a lot of conflict as a result of that. And then decades later, as I'm working with teenagers and parents, I see the same conflict. And I didn't want people to continue to experience the same thing that I had. I want people to have a different experience with their teenagers, that even in the mess and the conflict, they can still love the teen in front of them. And it doesn't mean that it's a perfect teenager. It means the unconditional love and delight in your teen, that you love them regardless of how they show up because they need it. Doesn't mean you keep them that way. It means you help them grow and change. But that was the major motivation behind that, is all these my experience personally and as a clinician, just seeing, I want people to have a different experience. I want to have this evergreen resource that people can use for all kinds of issues that come up. And that way they can use this as their go-to all the time, whether technology changes and it regresses or we go into a cold, dystopic society, that this is something that you can rely on and look for guidance. And so that was a big motivation. And when I was sharing pieces of it with my mom as well, she was like, that's what I wish I had when I was raising you. And I was like, I think I'm flattered.
Did you
Because she was
say it's never too late that
it's
you could
never
start talking to me like this right now?
exactly. I mean, she was a single mom. She was divorced. I was the
Yeah.
youngest of three. She did a lot, sacrificed a lot, and she was going through a lot. As a teenager, I don't understand that. I feel like I'm going through this and you're not there for me. And so I'm going to rebel. And that's often, our teenagers aren't going to do this critical thinking and, oh, my mom is having a hard time, so I need to not give her a hard time.
Yeah.
And so this is my big why, and why I wanted to do this resource and put everything in one place. And it's the kind of resource that I wish I had when I was doing parent coaching and helping parents with their teens early on that I couldn't find.
What was the hardest part of writing the book for you?
Probably the hardest part was at the time I was going through severe neck and back pain. We were coming out of the pandemic. I have scoliosis that's pretty severe, and I had severe neck pain. And I think the hardest part was being able to sit down and write with that pain. Kind of hard to write when you have neck and shoulder and back pain. So
It sure is.
that was probably the hardest part, and being able to stay consistent. But I was determined. I'm like, no matter what, every Thursday, every Friday morning, 3 hours, I'm going to write no matter what. And I wanted to get done in a certain period of time. So I was able to get it done in 9 months, staying consistent and using my Pomodoro timer so that I would write for 25, take a break for 3, write for 25, take a break for 3. But yeah, staying focused in the middle of pain, and then things that come up, crises, events, all these things, being able to stay consistent, that was the hardest part. But I was like, no matter what, I'm going to write every week. So the consistency was the hardest part.
This makes it even more a true labor of love, right? And I think we don't realize that when we pick up books from authors. We're like, oh, great, a book. Yay for me. I can listen to this in 3 hours. And it's like, it took me a year of my life to write it, plus 10, 20 years of, research along the
Mhm.
way, So
Yeah.
obviously people like me get to reap the benefit of, people like you writing and putting so much of your wisdom and research and practicalness as well into this book. So I personally can't wait to get my hands on it. It is available for order. So I'll put that link in the notes for my listeners. And like I said, I like to be ahead of the game with everything. For example, my kids aren't teens. I'm buying this book. I'm also not perimenopausal or menopausal, but I'm doing all the things one should do as if you were. So I don't know if that's going to like push me into that part of my season, or I don't know if that's going to backfire, but I'm like, I need to be prepared. I'm an information gatherer at heart. And I'm like, how can I just be proactive? So
Yes.
I'm getting my hands on that book.
Thank you.
I can't wait. As we wrap up here, for the mom or parent who's listening, who might be just in the thick of it, a tough season, what is one small shift she could make this week or today to feel more connected with her kiddo?
The very first step that I always say, and I try to do it as much for myself, is get connected with yourself first. Many of us as parents, especially as moms, we think we have to be self-sacrificial, this martyr in the road to parenting our kids and teens. And then we neglect ourselves. We don't go to the doctor's appointment. We don't take our medicine. We don't get our exercise. We don't declutter our spaces. We're not doing dates with our spouses or partners. We're not having fun with our friends or going on vacations or girls' trips. And a big first step is taking care of yourself. Focus on who you are, because when you get triggered, when you feel annoyed, when you start to nag, when you rage out, many times it's because your own needs are not being met. And you will be a better parent when your needs are met. So I prioritize going on dates with my husband and having date days when they're at school and going on trips with people that I like separate from my kids and going on walks with my husband. I do all those things as well so that I can show up better for my kids. So one of the best ways to connect with your teen is first to connect with yourself. And then when you're able to do that, then you have room because you've been poured into. And now you have room to pour out into them and be present with them. Yeah, absolutely pour into yourself and make time for yourself first, and then connect with them in ways that matter to them.
And it makes that connection so much easier too. When you are connected, even if it's just like, hey, take 5 deep breaths before like my kid gets in the car after a car line, after a long day, you know the complaints are going to be coming. The school lunch tasted horrible. I'm hungry. Did you bring a snack? No. I'm thirsty. So I have to really ground myself. And that's just one silly example before I'm able to then connect, have those conversations and work on that relationship. And this is such great advice, because if you're not connected to yourself, it's just like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It's exhausting. I feel like I get resentful in those moments because I feel not good because I haven't had my snack. I need snacks too.
And then if you try to connect with them and then it goes not like you expected, and then you're already depleted, now you feel worse, and that's why you snap.
Yeah. Full circle. Dr. Ann-Louise, such a pleasure to have you back. Congrats on your new book. I'm so excited to... Now, is there going to be an Audible version out? I like to listen to a lot of books.
Absolutely. I was in the studio for 20 hours recording it myself. So,
that's me in a few months. So I'll be reaching out, asking for all the tips.
I have all the tips. But it was so fun doing it. But yes, the audio is also available, Kindle, Google Books, and hardcover. Those are all available. It'll probably also be translated into different languages at some point too. So, but those are all available. So while you're decluttering, using Katie's tips, you can listen with your earphones on.
Amen. That's what I'm going to be doing when I'm doing my decluttering, listening to Dr. Ann-Louise for sure. It was such a treat having you back. And congratulations. Thanks, Dr. Ann-Louise.